Welcome to the Perfect Pairing Podcast. On this podcast, we are smoking the cigar of the week this week, the new Cuba from Aganor Salif, and this one's got a special twist.
My name is Chris, and I am the whiskey expert and the cigar noob.
And I'm Adam. I am the cigar expert, but the whiskey noob.
And today we're finding the perfect pairing for this new Cuba, which I know nothing about aside from the name. So I'm just going to leave it there.
It's not a Cuban cigar for those of you that are curious.
That's worth pointing out. Now, you mentioned there's a twist to it, and I cut it, and I did like the dry pull or whatever you call it.
Oh, yeah.
Does it have a sweetened cap on it? Is that the twist?
Correct.
Okay.
It is a sweet tip cigar. So for those of you out there that may or may not have had one of these before, it's like an acid cigar, the Hypnotic from GTO, which was the brand, at least for the La Cura that we had a couple weeks ago. But yeah, so it's got like a sugary kind of flavor to it in the beginning, and you'll see that kind of gradually slide out of the way as you smoke the cigar. So first time we've had a sweet tip cigar on the show. I think it's going to be very interesting to go against some interesting pairings here. I think this is going to be a super interesting one. I can positively tell you guys I have never done a pairing, like at least a focused pairing whole thing with a sugar tip cigar. So this is going to be quite interesting. But before we get into all the pairings and everything, I got the trivia question of the week. This one is a little bit of a doozy. So you see this lighter here, okay? Nice and shiny, right? This, you can't, I think it's too shiny. You can't even see the brand. It's an St. DuPont lighter, okay? If you don't know anything about St. DuPont, all I will tell you is that they are high-end. But it's still a lighter, right? So the question is, how much is this lighter worth? Just a single flame. It's consistent, looks a little bit like a lightsaber, but how much do you think that this lighter is worth? That's the trivia question of the week.
Are you able to divulge the model name of that lighter? So the brand is St. DuPont. What's the model?
No.
Okay, all right. I think I know the answer because I used to want one of those. Before I was into whiskey, when I was just into cigars, I was like, that's a cool lighter.
They are, yeah. And I was actually just in Vegas, for everybody who knows the cigar world, for PCA, basically the only important trade show for cigars every year. But I was talking to the St. DuPont guys, went over to their booth, and they had a replica of the Game of Thrones throne. Actually, sorry, not a replica, a throne that they used in the show there. And they made a partnership with Game of Thrones, or not partnership, they bought the rights. And they have a bunch of lighters and cutters that are Game of Thrones themed. They are badass. I mean, they're so cool. Like dragon lighters and cutters, the whole ashtrays. It's awesome.
That is super cool. Jeez. Yeah, I could see that just taking it up a notch. They've had some pretty wild designs before too. At least back when I was looking into it, and they looked super cool.
All right, so what's your opinion right off the bat before we even get into a pairing? I need to know.
I'm digging this. I think a lot of the guys coming over from the Whiskey Noob side who are listening, who are just getting into cigars, are going to dig this. The sweetened cap just totally makes it more approachable. It's almost like this is a lot like when you're getting into whiskey, having an old fashioned instead. An old fashioned is basically whiskey, a little bit of bitters, and sugar. So you're just adding sugar to your whiskey, basically. And this is the same idea. It's sweeter. It's nice and mild. The cigar doesn't punch you too much, but it does have some body, so it's at least not boring. So far, I'm very much enjoying this, especially. I don't know if I've said it on here before, but I definitely have told you before. I'm a big fan of acid cigars. I love the sweetened tips. This is, for me, something that I'm really enjoying.
Okay. I didn't know you were a big fan of acid. It's good to know, though. It's good to know. Yeah, I mean, if you are a fan of sweet tip cigars, you're going to love this cigar. Because I think it has, now there are some, like the Leather Rose, the whole Deadwood line from Drew Estate. I feel like those are a little bit more complex than your like Cuba or Acid Blondie, or even the Toast from Acid. Like it's funny because they're made by the same company. Drew Estate makes Acid and the Deadwood line, so they like the flavored or sugar tipped, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the important thing too, for everybody out there. Maybe I should have had this as the trivia question, but it's still a cigar because it's only what they do is they just spray. Some people do it a little differently. So if Aganorsa does it different, I don't know exactly how they do it. But typically, what they'll do is they'll just spray the wrapper with a little sugar water, and that'll be it.
Oh, good
And
to
that's how
know.
they get that in. That's why it's infused, not like coated necessarily. It's not like they dip it in some sugar and then rub it off or something like. That's
Now
how
is
they get that
Acid
flavor.
doing something to make theirs more perfumey because they're like more aggressively, almost like flavored. Like
Yeah,
they seem more flavored to me.
I would say they may be just spraying some more of that sugar on there,
Oh
or sugar
wow,
water.
okay. I thought for
If I had to
sure there was
guess.
like some kind of flavoring something going on, you know?
No, I mean that's where I was kind of going. Is it wouldn't be able to be a cigar. A cigar has to be 100% tobacco. There can be no additives.
Okay. So let me ask you this, and then I promise we'll get to the pairings. But what are they doing for cigars that are like, this is blueberry flavored? Like, what's happening there? Or is it technically no longer a cigar, but they call it that?
Are you talking about like the cigarillos you see at the gas station?
More like CAO flavors, for example.
Mm. Um, those are very creatively blended.
Ah,
And I
okay.
think it's still like sugar is technically non-tobacco. It's on here. I think what they do is they take like blueberry water and
Oh,
spray it. If I had to guess, I don't know. I actually do
okay.
know the guy that blended that whole line, so I should ask him and be like, "Hey, man, are you cheating the industry or what?"
I'm curious. I'm curious. Well, maybe we have to follow that up with a trivia question later once we find the answer.
Yep, I like it.
All right, so pairing number one today, we have Brook Laddie, the classic Laddie. Once again, I believe we've already had this on here once because we talked about
Yep.
how impossible it is to pronounce this brand's name. And very light, very mild, single malt scotch, just delicious, nice light stone fruit flavors. And so I was excited to see how it would go with this cigar. I actually didn't know it had the sweetened tip, but I did know that it was a sweeter cigar just from like a quick Google search.
Yep.
So I was hoping that the sweet and the sweet will play together. But if they don't, we've got some other options to try to see what will happen with a little bit more body.
I think it's still interesting though. I mean, like you would never typically go in your head right away and say, "Sweet tip cigar, let's drink some scotch." Right? I
Right.
mean, at least on my end of things, that's not where I would go as the whiskey
Right.
noob.
Especially because some scotches are so funky and so malty that it doesn't seem like it would go with something sweet. But luckily, this classic laddie is very sweet forward. So that's where like maybe the not Aberlour, but the
Like the Ardbeg,
Ardbeg.
that's yeah,
Yeah,
heavier peated.
exactly. Maybe that would be a little bit too heavy for this cigar. But I'm excited to see what happens with the classic laddie. Have you had a sip yet?
Yeah, I just took a sip. The classic laddie, I think, was really welcoming to the cigar. I think it definitely made it tame. You know, we've talked about this before. I think this is another great pairing. If you're not a Scotch guy, I'm not a huge Scotch guy, but this pairing is a great pairing to get into Scotch. I think it really tames any of those kind of gasoline flavors that people that don't know what they're talking about or rookies, I should say, talk about Scotch. But then when I went back to the new Cuba, I feel like the sweetness was nearly gone, and it was like you're experiencing the cigar as if they didn't have any sweet tip on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. What are you getting?
No, I'm thinking I'm on close to the same track as you. I think the sweetness of the Bruichladdich is exaggerated, and the sweetness of the cigar is toned down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do want to say, I'm realizing as I'm sipping and puffing, all of my rankings and or ratings might be a little bit biased today because I'm realizing this is the first time I've sat down, had a cigar and whiskey for a couple of weeks because we had a little bit of a break where we had to
Yep.
record in advance. and this is so great. This is so great right now.
Chris is like, oh, 10, 10.
They're all 10s.
So basically, everybody just don't listen to Chris. Just listen to me, because I've been smoking plenty of cigars while he was out of the country and doing his thing, and I've been smoking and drinking the whole time.
Okay, so you got a level head. I do not.
It's an interesting one, though. And I'm very intrigued to see how it progresses with everything else. Because, again, this is the first time I've ever paid attention to any pairing with sugar-tipped cigars and infused cigar. I mean, there's so many names for them. Flavored cigars we like to stay away from, just so everybody out there knows, in the cigar world, because we are trying to separate ourselves from the Swisher Sweets of the world and all of that sort of stuff when it comes to legality.
Mm-hmm.
Because people say that flavored cigars are smoked by little kids. And if it's a flavored cigar, then you're promoting younger smoking, underage smoking, and then they're trying to ban. There's actually a flavored cigar, it's called flavor ban right now, out for tobacco, because they don't want 13-year-old smoking, and neither do we. Just to be clear, everybody, if you're 13 and listening, you can listen all you want. Don't smoke or drink.
True.
But so like that's why it's like kind of like a weird thing in the entire industry right now, is like they're even saying, like, if we say that this cigar is giving me a note, like a flavor note of wood, then it's a flavored cigar, because you're saying it's a flavor note. It's like, that's not flavored. It's like saying dirt tastes like earth, so it's a flavored dirt.
Yeah.
That's not flavored.
Right.
And I've never seen an underage person walk in a cigar lounge. It's too intimidating for people that are like 30.
Right. I was insanely intimidated when I first got into cigars. That's the whole reason, not the whole reason, that's almost the whole reason I started Whiskey Noobs, is because I was like, whiskey's super intimidating. Cigars are super intimidating, So I think they're barking up the wrong tree with that one. And I also would agree with you, though. These are very different from something like a Swisher Sweet. This is literally, it tastes like a cigar that leaves a sweetness on your tongue. It's not like the difference between Crown Royal and Crown Peach. It's more like the difference between, let's say, Crown Royal and making an old fashioned with Crown Royal. It still tastes, an old fashioned still tastes like whiskey. It just tastes sweeter. This is how this is. It's not like a flavored whiskey. For a comparison for you whiskey lovers out there.
That's a good comparison. Definitely would agree.
Now,
I was going more like the Crown Apple, because that thing tastes like a Jolly Rancher.
Yes.
And it's not even like I could drink that straight all day and never know I'm drinking whiskey.
Right. Especially you put it with some cranberry juice. Ooh, that's a little fall drink hack for you guys listening. Very good.
My wife was a big fan of that like 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. It's tasty. Now, I have an opinion, a specific opinion about this pairing that I want your opinion on. When I go straight from the Bruichladdich to the New Cuba, if I had my eyes closed, if I was blindfolded and I didn't know what I was smoking, I would think this was a darker cigar. I would think this had like a darker wrapper on it. Do you get that same? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. It brings it to this near like darker Habano level, nearly a Maduro.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which makes sense because Maduros are sweet. So like that's where that's coming from, probably in our head. But I agree 100%. I think it's delivering such a different profile, to where I'm gonna say this one is a tricky one. But I'm gonna say this one's antagonistic.
Okay.
I feel like the Bruichladdich is being relatively the same. It's changing a little bit, but not as much. The New Cuba is like a different cigar, completely.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I was also on the edge between complimentary and antagonistic, and I agree with you. It's not like the Bruichladdich is a different whiskey. I think it's maybe a little bit brinier and maybe a little bit sweeter. especially that first sip, it was very different. But then as I go back and forth more and more, it's just kind of brinier and just a little bit sweeter. Whereas the cigar, I literally would think I'm smoking a Maduro right now. It's got darker notes. It's got that nice sweetness behind it, but almost with like a chocolatey, woody flavor that I would never have anticipated from this cigar.
Agreed. I think it reminds me a lot of the FP Habano that we had.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like where I was going in my head. It's got Maduro vibes, but I mean, maybe it's because I know the cigar and I'm like, no, this is not a Maduro. Like, it's not gonna hit you like that. But
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
I'm
I can
intrigued to
totally see that.
see how this stacks up.
Yeah. Because this next one we've got, this was either a favorite or it was just way up there in our rankings. This Morris Muscat barrel. I recall it doing very well with our last pairing. So, next up, we've got an Australian single malt whiskey. So, still a single malt, but not from Scotland. This is from Australia. This is Morris, the Muscat barrel finish. And I'm going to look up actually what we paired it with last time. I remember that it did pretty well.
I was gonna say, I think it was both of our number ones.
I was thinking the
Whichever one
same
it was.
thing. Let's
It was
find
definitely
out.
high up there.
Russell Morris. Oh
'Cause it
my
was the
gosh,
first.
yeah. This got a 9.3 with that FP Habano. So if this tastes like the FP Habano right now, we might be onto something.
Ooh. Now I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Now it's going to be in my head. I'm going to be biased, but
Yeah.
I'm
All
already
right,
biased.
guys. Now we're gonna take a brief intermission while Chris and I just enjoy our drinks.
Yeah, true that. Just sit
John,
back,
cut this
focus
out.
on the road again if you're driving.
Yeah, exactly. Focus on the road. Just enjoy the sounds of sweet puffing and sipping. Hmm. Whoa.
Yeah.
What? What? What the heck? Okay. This cigar is doing all sorts of crazy stuff to this whole pairing episode. What?
Yeah, I would say the single malt is a little bit wild right now too.
What? No,
Wow.
that's where I was going.
Yeah,
That Morris does not taste like Morris.
not one bit.
What the
It
heck just happened?
I'm curious what you found with the flavor difference because I think I know what's happening, but I want to hear your opinion.
All right, 1 second.
Yeah, take your time.
Hmm.
I'm going to try the cigar a little bit more cuz I glazed over that cuz I was so impressed by the whiskey.
Okay. So I had a puff of the cigar, but it took a second. I poured the whiskey, and then I had the whiskey. Right away, it was like drinking like melted caramel.
Mm,
Like that's what I was getting, and it was so smooth. I mean,
yeah.
that was like buttery smooth, just simple, easy to drink, single malt like that. I mean, I just keep looking at it because I'm like, what? That that can't be. I must have replaced the bourbon or the whiskey in there with something different because it tastes so different than I remember. And this
Mhm.
is only my second pairing with it, so that's why I'm intrigued to see what you think too. But overall, I think the cigar actually remained relatively the same, shockingly.
Totally agreed. I think the cigar tastes almost exactly the same. This muscat, I think what's happening is the finish of this whiskey is just forefront right now, because for sure when I reviewed this whiskey, I did a whole actually like TikTok and Instagram review of it, and it was Australian single malt with a little bit of this fruitiness and a little bit of this caramel sweetness, maybe molassesy. Now it's like molasses and plum. Like that's what I'm getting. And then a little bit of the maltiness, a little bit of the Australian single malt. But the sweetness factor is just cranked up to 11 right now.
Yeah, it's like it flipped somehow. Like
Mm-hmm.
as you were saying, and I was like, yeah, now as it's been lingering on my palate, I'm getting a little bit of that what you would expect out of the Muscat barrels and the Australian single malt, like the typical things that you would feel kind of when you're drinking it. those are there now, but right on the palate, right when it hits that tongue, it is so crazy different. That is
It's so
weird.
sweet. Yeah. It almost tastes like I mean, it's so sweet that it almost reminds me I just had a like a dessert mead. Like mead is like a honey wine.
Yeah.
I had like a dessert one, and it's almost reminded me of that, where it's like that level of sweet on the tip of your tongue.
How interesting, man.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, guys, we are pioneers in the frontier right now. We're this is like, at least for me, I'm supposed to be the cigar guy, and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening.
Right. It is. It's pretty crazy. I'm really wondering if this Morris is just a really good pairing whiskey or what it is. But 2 for 2 is pretty insane. I didn't expect it to go well twice in a row.
Yeah,
We'll have to try it with like a totally different cigar in the future and see what happens.
yeah. I would be super intrigued. I'm trying to think our next like really heavy Maduro.
Mm-hmm.
That would be. It's funny because I'm thinking it would be really good.
Right.
But it may be able to run over, like last 2 weeks ago, I think, the Nika Reserva, even though that held up pretty interesting. We haven't had like an incredibly light cigar yet, like
No.
something that's just like super light.
Yeah.
Um, Trying to remember if we've got one in the lineup. I'm sure we do, but
I'm wondering if maybe like the Candela wouldn't have enough for this. I don't know. It's hard
the
to say.
Candela may be weird with it.
It
But I
might
would
be.
have
It might
thought
have.
this. I did not think this was going to work.
True. Agreed. Agreed.
This cigar is like, I'm gonna go super nerdy here. He's like the Pokemon Ditto. He's just morphing into whatever shows up, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll hang out with a little Brulati over here. Sure, I'm in the island. Oh, okay. You want to go to Australia? I can hang out. I can put some shrimp on the Barbie. Like, let's do it." He's just hanging
True.
out.
We're gonna throw it a hard curveball here with this next one. We'll see. We'll see how it does.
Yep.
So far though, I think we can almost definitively say antagonistic. I think the
Yes.
whiskey changed a ton. The cigar held steady, but just changed the whiskey like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Agreed 100%.
Now, this next pairing that we've got Green River's Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. If you know Green River like pretty well, this is the one that has the rye in it because they make two of the same exact mash bills, except one mash bill has rye. The other mash bill, they take out the rye and they put in wheat and they make it a wheated bourbon. So this is the rye mash bill. And so this should be spicier. This should be bolder. This should have a little bit more body. So I'm interested to see what happens with the cigar.
Yeah. This is. I don't have any expectations anymore. So, cheers, everybody.
Yeah, I have no idea what to expect. Cheers.
Okay. All right. Okay. Everybody then not watching the YouTube or whatever is just not at least watching us and just listening is like, what's this guy doing? Okay. Okay. Okay.
Right. If you guys want, I could smack my lips so you know that we're drinking whiskey, but I got a bad review for that once. So they're like, don't smack your lips into the microphone. I'm like, I'm literally drinking whiskey for an hour straight with no guest talking into a microphone. I'm trying my best here.
Yeah. That's no guest podcasts are tough, man.
Oh, it's tough.
Those one are difficult.
Speaking into the abyss for 45 minutes. It's tough.
Yeah. A lot of props.
Much appreciated.
Holy crap. This whole 1 through 3 thing, I just want to skip it. I don't even know what. This is weird. It just depends so much, I feel like, on your palate at the time, your personal preferences. These three, here's what I'll say. I'm just gonna make a blanket statement right now. If you love this cigar, congratulations. You found a cigar that's gonna go with a lot of things.
Yes.
That's what I think, at least on the cigar side of the world, is if you like the cigar, guys, go to the bar, drink what you want, and you're probably going to have a good time.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think with this one, so I have a couple opinions, and don't worry about making me feel bad. Tell me if you disagree. I'm okay with it. I think I'm gonna just swing for the fences here. I feel like this is the first whiskey that has made the cigar sweeter again. I feel like it brought back some of those light, sweet vanillas that I did not get with the other two whiskeys. I feel like in that way, the cigar is very elevated. And then I feel like the whiskey on the nose, I get those nice, deep bourbony notes, but on the palate, I'm not getting them as much as I know that I do with this whiskey. So I feel like it's still bringing out the sweetness factor. It's kind of hiding the oak a little bit.
Very interesting. I would agree. I'm just thinking about what we would call that
Good
because
question.
it wouldn't necessarily be complimentary. It's complimentary to the cigar, but I think the bourbon may be a little harshed
Mm-hmm.
or silenced, muted is the
Muted.
word I'm
Yeah.
looking for.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what we're gonna have to make up a word eventually for that one.
Yeah.
Just because this cigar just decided to throw us through a giant loop and do whatever it wanted today.
True. I feel like if you want the cigar to taste sweeter, the bourbon is the move. If you want the whiskey to taste sweeter, the single malts are the move, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because I agree. I didn't even uh, point it out, but I definitely agree. The cigar, the sweetness is back. The sweetness is forward. It's there. It's very easy. I mean, definitely compared to the Brulati that we had,
Mm-hmm.
there is no like, oh, this could be a Maduro. That is not happening right now. Like
Right.
it's a very easy cigar. It's a very the sweetness is back. Everything that you would if you had this with water, it would be very similar. But now I think the bourbon, the sweetness in the bourbon is elevating it just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Definitely agreed. I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna punch in my ratings to keep myself honest, as always. So feel free if you've got a monologue about these, or if you just want to like do the ABCs backwards, whatever you want to do for the next 30 seconds. I'm gonna
All
type
right,
these
the
in.
next 30 seconds. Here we go. How expensive is this lighter?
Good
And
question.
this is a good test for those of you guys out here. Here's a monologue for you. If you can do this and your lighter, oh, it didn't work that time, lighter is consistent, then that's typically a sign of a good, obviously you can't just like, and it's whatever going to work. But if you click it and consistently it's turning on, that means you have a good quality lighter. Obviously, eventually lighters are going to go out of whack. The dust gets in the middle. That's why, by the way, this has the closure and it opens. A lot of lighters do not have this. This, when you open it up, as I burn the crap out of my phone, when you open it up, you see, so the dust doesn't get down on the ignition, so it lights more often. But this lighter, Chris, what's your guess? I want to guess from Chris. How
Okay.
expensive is this ST DuPont lighter?
All right. So I'm 19 years old again. I'm not into whiskey yet. I'm getting into cigars. I found this super cool lighter on like a YouTube video.
Washington Dreamer cigars.
Yeah, of course, of course. That wasn't out yet, probably.
No, definitely not.
150.
Definitely not close.
What?
This lighter right here is $1,400.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. They have a base model that's like 150, right?
I think so, but typically they
Okay.
are up there. I mean, 150 is
Holy
even up there,
cow.
but I mean they go big. They go big. But yes, this lighter is $1,400, and in case you guys are curious, no, I did not spend that money on this cigar or this lighter. It was a
What?
gift.
I gotta remember the name of the one that I almost got. Not almost got, but I wanted. I never almost got. I should make it clear. I was like 19 years old. I didn't almost get any of these, but I
But
wanted
yeah,
one of them.
$1,400.
Oh my gosh.
For a lighter, guys, I'm just gonna say it. I love ST DuPont, and if you got the money, do it. But no, I would never spend that money on it.
Right.
No way.
Ah,
For me to spend $1,400 on a lighter, it also has to come with a stock that I can make my money back.
right.
Like I want stock in your company. Like
Yeah.
I'll buy your lighter and you give me one share, and hopefully your company goes up, and I'll make my money back eventually. That's the
That's
only way
fair.
I'm spending $1,400 on a lighter.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would make it worth it, probably. You're
Yeah.
basically paying for stock in the lighter, but stock in the brand at that point. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
holy cow. Okay, okay. They've got like a $250 one. That must have been what I was thinking about. Holy cow, $1,400.
And that is not their most expensive.
Just from that quick Google search? No, it's definitely not.
No, I mean they're different brand but same aura. El Septimo cigars. We'll probably have them in the cigar of the week this year. Um, El Septimo Cigars always likes to do something extravagant every time at the trade show. This year they did not, at least from what I saw. Maybe there was a back room that I wasn't invited into. But last year they had 3 ashtrays, one single ashtray. They were all the same price, but one was worth $10 million. An ashtray.
An ashtray. What was special
Diamond
about the ashtray?
plated
Oh,
gold. There's so it's gold and it has diamonds on it. I
wow.
think there was a total of like I don't even want to say the number. I think it was like 20 carats worth of diamonds on there.
What are these getting bought for? Is it for like a fancy lounge or
No, it's individuals for sure. It's
oh
rumored that
my.
last year Chad Ochocinco bought one of the $10 million ashtrays.
Didn't he also wear some insane? No, wait, no, I'm mixing up with a different football player, but like an insane watch. I forget. I don't watch
Probably.
football at all, so
Yeah,
can you
probably.
tell? Does it show? Uh,
Chris is just a big basketball fan. That's why he's all about the Dennis Rodman box. You know,
that's what it is.
shameless plug.
Shameless. All right, I had
All
to
right,
change my rankings because I ran back through them, and they
I'm
are as
going
good
back.
as I remembered them being. So I thought, maybe I was a little bit biased there in the beginning. No, these are wow, not bad. Okay, so if you want, I can run through my rankings while you think of your ratings
Yeah,
and
you're going
rankings.
1 through 3, right? First,
First, yeah, I'm just gonna
and
go
then we'll
one
do the
through. Well, I'll go
ratings.
3, 2, 1.
Okay.
So in third place, I've got the Green River. Not because it doesn't go well with it, quite the opposite. Because I love Green River's bourbon, and it was just a little bit more muted. Like I know what that bourbon can taste like, and I love it, and it's a little bit muted right now. So for me, I put that in third place. Second place, I actually have to look because I went back and forth a bunch of times. Second place, I decided it was really close to a tie. I had it at a tie, and I was like, we can't do ties. Second place, I put Brook because the Morris changed so much that I'm just incredibly impressed by it. So I have Morris at first once again, but it was by a razor margin because I couldn't believe how much it changed. And as I continued with the Brook it became a little bit more and more salty, whereas the Morris just continued with this super pungent, not pungent's not the right word, super strong, sweet flavor that I really liked.
So I'm on the same vein. I just went back, and when I hit the Brulati, yeah, it wasn't what I remembered exactly. It wasn't. I think we were just so shocked by the cigar, and there was so much going on in our palates. Now that we've had a variety on the palate, you can really tell the differences. And I'm going Brulati at 3. I think the kind of the Scotch factor became a little bit heavier. For me, I'm not a huge Scotch guy, so I think it became too much, like just the little bit of burn going on. It still wasn't bad. I would still have it, but it definitely is not exactly what I remembered in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
At 2, I've got Green River. I enjoyed. I haven't had Green River probably as much as you have, but
Mm-hmm.
you know this is my first bottle, but I'm about halfway through it. So I've enjoyed it. I'm definitely a fan, and I enjoyed this pairing. I thought it played very interestingly together. Overall, I think just being a sugar tip cigar, I am not a sugar tip cigar, by the way. I
Oh,
do not smoke acids. I do not smoke the Deadwood line. I would rarely smoke this cigar. It's just not my cup of tea.
okay.
Um, it doesn't mean I don't recommend it for people.
Hmm.
It just means it's not my thing. Some people smoke cigars every day and they hate Maduros. Doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means that's their palate.
Hmm.
But the Morris, I mean, come on, that you can't. I don't know. I mean, like I'm like, we better have Morris in the next episode. I'm like, we need to kill this thing. We need to not ruin the hype, but Morris, props to you guys. That's all I gotta say.
Yep,
Props to you guys. That was flawless.
totally agreed.
The
These
pairing
pairings
was
have been
flawless.
fantastic with it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's throw out our ratings then. I'll let you go first since I went first for the rankings, and I will type in your ratings as you go here.
All right, so I'm gonna start with the Brulati from
Okay.
the beginning. I'm going 5.8.
Wow. Okay.
The only reason I'm going to 5.8, everybody, it's, PSA ratings are personal.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I don't think any of these are going to be very high because I'm not a infused, sugar tipped, whatever version of the saying we're going to call it, cigar guy. That's not my cup of tea. So most of these, they're not what I'm looking for when I go to a lounge. They're not what I'm looking for in general with a pairing. So
Right.
yeah, 5.8 with the Brulati.
That makes perfect sense because, as we established, I am a sugar tip guy. I am a sweetened cigar guy. And I put the opposite. I put 8.5. I
Ooh.
love this pairing. I thought the Brook Lottie, and I'm also a Scotch guy. I mean, I love bourbon. I probably drink bourbon the most, but I love Scotch too. And it was so sweet. It was so fruity, Scotch. And then the cigar having that sweet tip in the sweetness of the Brook Lottie made it a little bit darker, gave it more body. I was a very big fan, so I said 8.5.
Look at that. See, guys, you can defer. That's the furthest apart we've ever been for sure.
Yeah. And it makes
Going
sense.
to, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it makes sense. I mean, you don't like Scotch as much as I do, and you also don't like sweet tip cigars. It makes sense for us to have different ratings there.
Yep. See, guys, we're not lying to you. All right, we'll just go straight down the line. The Morris.
Mm-hmm.
The Morris is a tough one for me again because, like, I start with the cigar first, so it's just it's an interesting thing. So I'm like teetering here. I'm gonna go 7.5.
Not bad. Okay.
7.5, which is really high for a sweet tip cigar for me.
Right. Like I said, razor thin margin. I had 8.5 for the Brook Lottie. I went with 8.6 because I was like, this is just above that. I don't think either of these, or I don't think any of the tastings we've had on here today are like, you couldn't do better. Like, that's the tasting. I don't think they're there. I don't
Agreed.
think they're in the nines. But I do think for me, both of these single malts have been, if somebody handed it to me, I'd be happy. I wouldn't look around for a different pairing. I'd be like, all right, this is good.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I had to have another sip of the Green River before. Hmm. Okay. I'm gonna go 6.8 on the Green River.
Okay.
It was a good experience. I would do it again, but there's so many other things I would pick before it, and that's why it landed where it did.
Yep. I was very close. I had 7.1, and it was the same reason. It's like it was good. I wouldn't be upset if it was my option, but I especially just with the Green River, I just know what that bourbon can taste like. And so I would typically I'd reach for something different, probably.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting.
Yes, it was. This was one of the strangest cigars I think we've had in terms of the way it tasted with all the whiskeys.
I mean, that is not what I expected to happen. I'm
Mm-mm.
not unhappy with it. I'm pretty pleasantly surprised, I would say, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely, I mean, just kind of floored a little bit and almost speechless because I just keep looking at him and I'm like, well, how? And
Right.
it's just like, I just would just, if there was no cameras, I'd be staring at him and being like, you guys really? You three over there? You guys are doing this? Okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
If there
Like,
was no cameras, I would be very much over analyzing these right now because it is strange. It's
yeah.
one of the biggest changes that we've had, I think, in terms of just the change in the flavor profile of both the cigar and the whiskey, depending on which whiskey we're talking about. Um, Interesting, very interesting.
Very interesting. And if you guys did not get to experience this with us, I don't know why you haven't, but if you haven't heard about it yet, definitely join the Perfect Pairing Club so you guys can smoke these cigars with us. You guys get 10% off because you listen to the Perfect Pairing podcast. PPP10, that is your code to get 10% off the Perfect Pairing Club. It's $30 a month without the code. You get 4 to 5 cigars a month. It goes out to less than $7 per cigar if you stay for the entire year. I mean, there is no more affordable way to try new cigars. Never in the same calendar year are we going to have the same cigar twice. You're going to experience so many things under the sun, including this new Cuba from Aganorsa Leaf. And yeah, that's my second shameless plug of the day.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I think a lot of you guys come from the whiskey noob side. You probably have some of these whiskeys that we're drinking with them. You can smoke right alongside us and drink them, and drink the whiskeys, and you'll get to experience the strangeness that we experienced today.
Well, I think that's a great close, guys. Thank you for listening, Chris. Cheers, man.
Cheers.